In this video we are going to talk about borders. What we want to do in this image is we want to put borders all around this. Now since I have three divs here, I can't just go and plonk a single border command on it, because then I'm going to have borders all around all of the edges of the divs, which I don't want. I just kind of want to follow this shape over here. There's going to be a couple of gotchas that we need to look at. So let's start by adding some borders. Let's start off with one of the immediate problems. I'm just going to take this middle div here and I'm going to say I want to put in a border. I want it to be 10 pixels. I want it to be solid. And I want it to be gray. And now you can see, oops, this thing has kind of grown, and I don't want it to grow over this boundary. I want it to stay the size that it was. And so this is a box sizing issue. So you can go and study up a little bit more on what box sizing is, but to prevent this from happening, what we need to do is set the box sizing to border box. Right, so it just limits that to the border. And very often what people do on an application level is just say, make all my divs box, or make everything box sizing border box. Then you just never have to worry about this. But if you do see this kind of effect happening, then just know that it's a box sizing issue. And to fix that, you can add the box sizing in there. So here already you can kind of see the effect that we want to go for, except we don't want this here and we don't want that there. So what we want to set is the border top and the border bottom. But if I look at all three divs, in all of them I want to set the border top and the border bottom. So instead of going to go and set it on each individual div, maybe I can set my CS up in such a way that all of these divs will have a border top and a border bottom. But then for the left-hand div, I can just additionally add a border to the left. And on the right-hand div, I can additionally add a border to the right, which means that it'll have the top, the right, and the bottom. The bottom, again, the bottom to the left and the top, and then the top, which means that all of this space in between will be open. Here's our code. Let's go and add our box sizing here. So box sizing is border box. And we want to affect the middle div. So we're going to add another class in here called middle. Actually, we don't have to do that at all. Let's just take that out completely. All I really need to do is say, I want my border dash top to have 10 pixels, be solid, and be gray. But now I got to repeat this code for the border bottom and the left and the right, and if I want to make changes to this, I want to change the color, I want to change the size of the border, I got to repeat it over and over and over again, which is just too tedious. So to prevent us from having to do that, we are going to use CSS variables to define that once and use the variable in the places where we want it. Here I've added a CSS variable to the root. When I work with a component, I can use the component's root to add it, and very often from an application-wide CSS, you'll have a couple of variables in your application. So that's why I've just added it here as a root as an example for you on how you would do application-wide. Just note that when I use a component, I might use this a little bit differently. And you can also define CSS variables within the elements itself as well. We're not going to deal with that right now. We'll talk about CSS variables in a little bit more detail in other videos. The bottom line is I'm creating a variable, and the convention for CSS variables is that it's a dash dash and then the name of the variable followed by a colon and then the content that that variable has. So instead of putting in all of this stuff, I can just say I want to use the variable with the name of border. And in this case, I want to use the variable with the name of border also. And now all I need to do is add this, but use the left and the right. Okay, let's go and see what we ended up with. After refreshing our page, we can now see that we have a border all around, just like we wanted. Now, because we are using a CSS variable, you can see in your DevTools, the variables here are hyperlinks, and if you click on it, it'll take you to the variable. So I can go here and I can say change this to, instead of being 10 pixels, I want to make it 15 pixels or 20 pixels, just as you want. And it reflects everywhere. Okay, but is that all I can do with borders, or can we do some more interesting gnarly stuff? The answer is always with CSS, you can do more interesting gnarly stuff. But let me just show you one example. Currently, all of our divs has the top and the bottom. But what if I remove the top? Well, now I can see that the left and the right actually follows the curvature of my border radius. I can take the bottom off as well, and I can get that nice little effect. Let's leave this on as it is here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color to white and then give it a bit of opacity. And now you can see as I play with the opacity, I can get sort of a glowy effect where I can start creating 3D-esque look and feel to this. And later on, using pseudo elements, I can make it look all shiny and blingy. So borders is actually quite an interesting thing to play with. You can do a lot of effects with it without writing any additional code, just by having an understanding of how borders react to the shapes that you are working with. And then just a reminder again, CSS variables is so useful to write code once and then being able to just tweak it in one place without having to rewrite stuff. So just to sort of bring the point home, if I change solid here to dashed, right, I don't have to go and change it everywhere, just change it in one place. And now look at what happens here. So it's a very nice way for you to prototype stuff. It's a very nice way to introduce styling to your application. CSS variables is really something that you need to get into grips with, and so is borders and border radiuses.